Yeah, so the social dilemma is a situation in which a group of people can take a choice that is individually optimal to them, but that when scaled to everybody else, when everybody follows that choice, then everybody is worse off. The classic example is something like a fishery. If everybody, if you have a bunch of fishermen and they all catch, everybody catches a ton of fish, let's say, then the fishery will rejuvenate and, there'll be enough new fish in the ecosystem for everybody to continue to fish at this rate. But if one fisherman overfishes a little bit and let's say catches 2 tons instead, then nobody will be impacted, right? It's fine. There's enough fish to allow for that. But if every fisherman does this and overfishes by an extra ton, there just won't be enough fish to rejuvenate the fishery. So in this case, this is the social dilemma. It's the dilemma, it's the tragedy of the commons. So there's a tragedy in which you've destroyed the commons because you've made an individually rational choice that, in isolation doesn't impact everybody else, but when scaled, it does. So the solution to this social dilemma, or the social dilemma, is how do we make sure that everybody catches only 1 ton, right? Because that's the socially optimal thing to do for all of the fishermen in this case. And this is, of course, this idea is very general. So you could replace the fishery with pastures of land. You could replace it with clean air. Everybody pollutes a little bit. But they have incentive to pollute a little bit more, right? Because maybe they don't have to buy expensive, clean engines. Then if everybody does that, then the air is just worse for everybody else, right? Including yourself. So the solution traditionally, and this is something that has been studied extensively by Elinor Ostrom and others, is through institutions that monitor people's decisions that impact this commons, and then enforces somehow, or punishes, if you like, violations. And in many cases, this is why kind of government exists, right? In some way, it's the government is able to then exact the right punishment on the violators or the regulators, let's say. And those regulators, ideally, in kind of institutional economics, ideally this would be self-policing. So it will be the community policing itself. So you don't have to have an external party. And the reason has to do something with observability. So people can, it's the fishermen are in the best position to observe one another because they know all the tricks, right? Something like that. So so the idea of kind of having self-governing commons where people collectively police each other to ensure that their behavior is in line with the common good, which ultimately benefits all of them. So in the case of autonomous cars, the social dilemma that we've identified in the first paper we published in this space is that is public safety, right? So if you want to maximize public safety, and if you take a utilitarian logic and say our goal is just to minimize the total number of casualties and nothing else matters, then you would say, well, then the cars should just behave in a way that minimizes harm, even if that entails harming the person in the car. So if there's only one person in the car and there are 2 on the street, and you can save the 2 on the street by harming the person in the car and hitting a wall, that's what you should do. But obviously, that's not what people individually would opt into, because individually, rationally, they would only purchase the car, given the choice, they would only purchase the car that would protect them all the time. But if everybody does that, we won't minimize the total number of casualties. Now you could say, well, this pales in comparison with the total savings in lives that we're going to achieve from autonomous cars. And I would say, well, show me that, prove it, and then that's a separate discussion, right? But in the transition, presumably we're going to hit a point where not all the cars on the street are autonomous, or not all of them are yet, so vastly better than human drivers. And during that stage, well, what do we prioritize, right? So this is where kind of the question comes up, and we have a social dilemma. In this case, what we're deciding collectively is what the AIs should do, or how they should behave, and what kind of externalities or kind of negative consequences are they allowed to impose on others, right, in our service.